All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Mind of George show. And today we're just going to remove the veil. I have an incredible friend of mine, Brianna Sexton, who is just an absolute G at what she does and helping people live in their deepest alignment through all these modalities. And I had the pleasure of sitting down with her and she interviewed me. And I live pretty radically exposed. I live pretty open because it feels like my freedom. And quite frankly, if I was to look on paper at the last 3 to 6 months of my life, a couple of years ago, it would have broken me. I would have quit. I would have ran and hidden a hole. I would have done a lot of things. And I get to own and acknowledge that a lot of my existence as an entrepreneur, a lot of my posts, my content, my shares, my coaching was all for me. And it was reminders to hold me accountable to the things that I teach, to also practice them and not use my words, but be in a state of being. And I can honestly say that I've turned a corner, that something has shifted in me, that there's this newfound level of clarity. There's this level of confidence. There's this deep understanding of knowing, both from myself and from God, and that the work works, and it's a process, and it's iterative, and it's about our commitment to it, not how we feel about it. And it's so interesting because the dichotomy of some situations and what the evidence in the world looks like versus my ability to play the game and create different results and focus on the inputs and focus on the needle movers and have the patience to wait for the harvest has genuinely changed my life for the better. And I like to live raw and open and exposed in hopes that it tickles, or it gives you inspiration, or you pick up one thing, or there's something that you can use, or something that you can shift your perspective on to create the same results and give yourself the ability to win the game and protect those inputs to get there. And when Bree interviewed me, I got really, really deep. I talked about self-acceptance and alignment. I talked about the importance of heart-centered leadership, on how our perspective is the difference between our prison and our power, and how I measure success, how I handle life's challenges, feedback that I give myself, and personal responsibility, to emotional regulation in relationships, consistency in small steps, creating containers for success, and living in alignment. And it's been a very, very trying season, but it hasn't felt trying until I look back at the things that arose in front of me. It actually just felt like a really easy game, and one that I'm addicted to and committed to fully playing for the rest of my life. And this episode tickled me deep, and it was pretty vulnerable and authentic and real and raw as it gets. And my desire is that you listen to it and it supports you and it might help you, because I'm also here to help you and support you. And this podcast means the world to me. It's like a home and a safe space. And it's like we have this community, even though we're not in person. I wish we could all be sitting in a room together having these conversations, but that's my intention with these. And so I appreciate you immensely. I hope you really, really enjoy this episode. And Brianna, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for creating such a safe space, for interviewing me, for asking me questions, for just being incredible. And so without further ado, I apologize for the long intro, but that was on my heart to share. So let's get into the show.
I'm super excited. And so I have known you for 3 years, just about, plus or minus. And it has been a journey, and it has been an honor seeing you through the iterations of all 3 years. So I would like to ask, to start off, who is, as of January 31st, who is George Bryant? And what are you most proud of right now?
I love that you asked that question and framed that question, because you know me so well. I really, really appreciate that. Um, as of today, I am the happiest, with my heart the most full and the most aligned man that I have ever been. And when I look in the mirror, I have never, ever loved myself more than I do in this moment. And the most beautiful part is that, in the lens of perspective, if somebody was to pick the book up and read it from the outside in, they would think I had absolutely no evidence to believe that to be true. And it just makes me so happy, because there's a knowing, and nothing but ease follows that space. And so I genuinely can now say that I know that if you put your heart in the forefront of everything and flex the muscle of your own to stay in alignment, that absolutely everything around you will fall into place for you. And it really genuinely starts with what you see in the mirror.
I love that. I love
And
you.
to answer your question on what I'm the most proud of, you have not heard me talk about this. No one has heard me talk about this. I don't talk about revenue. I don't talk about numbers, because they don't matter. But I didn't genuinely believe that until a couple of months ago because sneaking shadows were still in, and I still believed the constraint of the world, and I was still committed to what it looked like. And so, what I am the most proud of is a part of your question where you got to say, and I've got to see the versions of yourself in so many of them. And I can look back on the last 6 months and look at 6 situations that would have put me in the hospital or made me question my own existence or life or spiral 5 or so years ago. And in the lens of, I made it out. Oh, we're back to 6 figures a month. Oh, we're back to nothing. We're back to 6 figures a month. We're back to nothing. All while still having multiple mid figures of payroll a month. That I genuinely took my own advice and I sat and I sat and then I trusted. And I trusted that it didn't matter what it looked like. It just mattered that I stayed aligned. And I put my inputs in consistently, no matter the results that were showing up in front of me, because I believed something to be true and managed to reinvent myself, my company, my team, and my family with what feels like 50 different ways in a matter of 6 months to now wake up and literally feel like I can't sleep because the amount of love and joy and grace and channeling that's flowing through me, I don't even have a bucket to put it in. And the distinction, Brie, and the breakthrough was as I realized that everything that fell out of my life this year and everything that stayed and showed up can be boiled down to 3 words that I say on the end of every single call. And it's I love you. And everything that fell out were people that got uncomfortable when I said it or wouldn't say it back or questioned if I meant it. And every client that stayed and every new one that showed up, every call starts and ends the same. And everything just feels really easy now.
I love that. Ah, I'm so happy for you.
So, yeah, I haven't talked about that.
Thank you for sharing.
Of course. Thanks for asking.
I'll ask another question.
Okay.
So with that, the ups and downs and those moments that can trigger us to stop, trigger us to hide, put us in that sympathetic flight or fight, fawn or freeze state, what would you describe as the impetus? Or you talked about the inputs. How do you design those to handle the big waves in the storm?
Yeah, really interesting. Because even in you asking that question, my answer is you can't handle any of it. You have no control. You only have control of how you see the situation and how you choose to react or respond to it. And that's part one, is understanding that. I posted this the other day and I said perspective, the difference between your prison and your power. Because what we look for is something to do when those things arise, some reaction, some checkbox, something that gives us the illusion of safety because we're not willing to stand in the dark without our own flashlight and figure out where to find the answer. So as much as everybody wants a tactical answer to this one, I'm going to give it to you. It's to sit with it until you find it. And I can give it to you in a children's book. Well, what happens when my client gets mad at me and they cancel, or when my wife tells me that she's mad at me, or whenever blah, blah, blah? That's guaranteed to happen. And the only time you lose is when your emotions take over for your choices and decisions, and those temporary feelings create permanent undesirable results. And so the truth is that number one is you have to recognize is that the illusion of safety or control or getting rid of these things that happen in life, bad days, flat tires, you've already lost. You're guaranteed to get a flat tire, but you only lose when you slash the other three and just instead of just changing that fucker and getting back on the road. And so the true answer to this, Brie, is that the breakthrough is doing nothing, not having some input to put in. The true breakthrough is the pause. Because to think that we can pre-plan an input for a situation that hasn't happened, impossible. We can pre-plan an input to make us feel like we have a plan, but the whole purpose of the input is so that in that moment we think differently and look for a different solution instead of the one that's staring us in the face. That's only going to bring more pain. I'm also breaking the fourth wall for you a little bit right now.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And so the truth is that really at the end of the day, how I think about this and how I land and look at this, right? So I've known you for 3 years, right? And we've had many, many, many conversations, and we've actually had many challenging conversations on both sides of the table, whether you recognize that or not. And so you have also given me feedback over the years, both direct and very, very indirectly in many ways. And so here's how I gauge this. In some of that feedback you've given me, It doesn't even tickle. It doesn't land in any way, shape, or form, right? That's purple dinosaur feedback, meaning if you say it to me and it doesn't cause a reaction in my body, it's not mine. But you've also said things to me that have caused very painful reactions in my body. And so around your name being one of them. And so in that moment, because I recognized it in my own body, I knew that your feedback was accurate because I could see it and feel it. So the answer to this is truly understanding ourselves. Because if it doesn't land, it's not mine. But if it lands, it's not yours. It's mine. And we only lose when we make it about the other person or the other thing. Because the only reason it tickled is because we recognize it as our own truth. And that's the true reason that we get to sit with it. Because when we recognize it as ours, it's ours to figure out the payoff and the pattern to then say, okay, but that's not true anymore. So what would I like to be true? And who would I like to be in this moment? And I'll give you a tangible example if you think about relationships with men and women. When a woman is upset at her man and she's about to go to town, wig comes off, chancla comes off, and comes flying across the room. And she's like, I'm so. What's the absolute worst thing a man can do in that moment?
Go back or call her
Talk,
crazy. Okay.
talk, talk.
Mm.
But in that moment, when she's like, well, you did this and you did this and you did this, he's only talking because he's defending, right? And he goes to, no, I did it for this. I did it for this. I did it for this. But all that lets her know is that she's unsafe. She was right. And now it's not safe to be with him. But in that moment, if he pauses and listens and you complete and he's like, you're right, what happens?
She backs down.
Because anger is a secondary emotion. She's testing to see if it's safe. And that's her way of testing. His response is everything. Well, the only time men get defensive is when it's right. And the only time we lose is when we react to that. So the simple tilt is when Ashley gives me feedback, when you give me feedback, when Lindsay gives me feedback, if it tickles, you're right. It's mine. If it doesn't, you're right. I'm still going to listen. I just might not make an adjustment. And that's the true answer for how I have the capacity and the perspective to stay in those situations. Because at the end of the day, too, if we're all going to read the books and we're all going to do the work and we're all going to say extreme ownership and 100% responsible. And if it's up to be, it's up to me and no one else can build my vision and it's be, do, have, then is there really another way? Or else are we just living a lie and trying to convince ourselves we're doing the work instead of being the work? And that's a question that nobody can answer but ourselves. And I'll say the only difference was at the beginning of the year, I decided to take my own medicine.
I think, actually, I don't think, I've seen how the be and the do and the have is so powerful, and also putting it in that order.
It's the only order that actually exists because doing is thinking. That's not presence. That's a checked box in a plan.
With that, in our being or choosing how to be
Be.
differently,
Mhm.
I'm going to leave this a little bit because you have amazing information on this. What are steps that you take that are very tangible to be differently in every day?
Yeah, I love this. I love this. I think first, like, I want to define what being is because I feel like this gets a little ethereal for people. Being is intentionally choosing how to show up in a moment, not driven by your emotions. That's what being is, in my opinion. It's in any moment being willing to intentionally choose to show up a different way, even if it doesn't feel like that would be the way to try something different. My state of being is how I'm showing myself to the world. And what I've also recognized is that if I'm thinking, I'm not being, I'm thinking. Kind of like my favorite Thich Nhat Hanh quote that says, the moment you recognize you are, you no longer are, which is the easiest tilt in coaching people because they're hilarious and they're so honest. Because when you're in your brain, you're trying so hard to portray an image that you divulge all the information and you'll vent to me all day. And you're like, and I'm just because I'm so stuck. And I'm like, what's so funny is that because you have the awareness that you're stuck, you're actually not stuck. You're just not doing anything new because you're looking at everything back there. Because the moment you can see it, you're no longer doing it. But it's also the same as like when you're in flow state and you're in a moment or in a workout, the moment you recognize you're in flow state, what goes away?
Stuck.
The flow state.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because the moment you think about it, you're no longer being it or putting the inputs in that created that in the first place. Because now you're trying to keep it and not lose it. So you stopped making the deposit that created it because you want to hold on to it so bad. And then you try to hold on to it even more and you stop even more doing the things that created it. That's the trap over and over and over again. And so it's always about the present, no matter what. But in that specific situation, I'll even use a tangible one. You've given me feedback. In that moment, my body and my brain is like, Bree, I didn't mean it. Amazing. That's a response. That's a state of being. Whether intentional or not, when I send that, that's a state of being. But if I can pause, I can also say, what are 5 other possibilities? Or 2 other ways to respond, and choose to insert a new one and try something different. And that's me actually trying my state of being. And so every morning when I wake up, I write in my journal that I lost my business, my friends, my family, and I ask one question: who do I get to be to earn it back today? Since tomorrow's gone and I have no control over what happens tomorrow, or yesterday's gone, I have no control over what happens tomorrow, but I have full control over the inputs that I give today to potentially create something I want in the future. And I'm like, great, I'm going to go upstairs. I'm going to say this to my ex-wife because I want her to know this is how I feel about her. I'm going to go intentionally say this to my son and daughter and write a sticky note in their lunch that reminds them of this. I'm going to text these 3 people that popped into my brain that these 3 things happened and I feel this way. And I write them down and then I go do them. And then I go live my life. And then I do them again, I do them again, and I do them again. And I ask myself who I want to be. And I'm like, today I want to be calm. I want to be slow. How would I do that? I'd be gentle today. I would just take my calls and rest between the rest. I'm going to reduce my workout and just walk today because that's what feels good. Okay. And then I go do it. I don't mentally masturbate about it. I don't write it down and never look at it. I don't add more and more and more and more and more that'll never start. The moment I find the first thing that can happen, I earn the right to do the next one. Because if I don't do the first one, I can't do any of them. Because there is no perfect right next step. There's no perfect right next plan, except for the one you try. But I think the biggest mistake that people make is they measure in days and not decades. And it's not that hard, but we have to practice and focus on our consistency, and we have to focus on what matters. And so, in my opinion, if at any point in your day you're operating out of alignment, you know it. You're thinking about other things while trying to do a specific thing, and you're wondering why neither is creating the result that we want. And then you have enough gall to look yourself in the mirror and convince yourself that you don't know why. And then go one step further and say, oh, it's because I'm missing something. Let me go collect 88 pieces of more confusion to stack onto my lie instead of just pausing, becoming present, feeling whatever the feeling is, allowing whatever the thought is, not making them wrong, and be like, okay, great. What would I like to do about it? Because any other option is advocating the responsibility that you've had the whole time. If you're in a movie and you don't like the movie, do you have to stay in the fucking movie theater? No. Branson and I walked out of a movie a week ago. Bye. So what? We went and bought a different movie ticket. You don't like it, change it. I love how Bob Proctor talks about this, though, because what ends up happening is we don't like the movie that we're seeing. So we try to change the scene instead of changing what's in the projector. And so we look at the movie and we're like, no, pause, stop, don't do that. And we look for immediate feedback. Oh, no, don't do, And then no. And then you realize that the only thing you're seeing is from right here. That's the only image that's being portrayed in front of you is what's installed right in here. And most of the time, we don't like what's in here because we're asking, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? What do we do? Because we don't want to feel what's underneath it. And so we change that shit out there or convince ourselves it only happens at this level. But really what's driving us nuts is every time we check those fucking boxes, this hurts more and more, and we ignore it more and more, and we try to distract ourselves more and more, and we try to add more shit to the plate and more, and add more things to do. Well, we'll Mike Tyson you right now. The magic you're looking for is in the work you won't do and the feelings you won't feel. Because if in a moment I don't like how I feel, no one else's responsibility is to change that feeling. It's mine. And it's not because of what Bree did or my ex-wife did or my partner did. It's that I'm convincing myself they have control over my emotions instead of me realizing I have full control over everything around me. And if I don't like the fucking picture, well, you better change the radio dial, but not sit around and wait for somebody else to do it. That's the real answer. Everywhere, including 3 months ago, when as the guy who's the guy had negative $640 in his business bank account with $27,000 a month in overhead, with only 3 months of padding and no other asset in. And yet I still found a way to fly to Hawaii, not tell anybody, and be complete service and sell nothing, and then sit with it, and somehow magically brand new clients flowed in. Except I couldn't do it my old way because they were all in Australia. So I guess I should say no to them. Nope. Every model in the trash. What do you need? I'll build it for you. Let's go. Redo the business. Boom. Worked till November, out the door and did it again. But I suppose I should just go back to September and just wait, right? I guess it's negative. So somehow magically, it's just going to show up in front of me. Or I have to still be on the field and give myself a chance. But if I stop putting deposits, if I stop making inputs, if I stop swinging, even when I'm losing, do I have any chance at winning the game? No. I don't like to learn lessons the easy way until now. I've learned that pattern is gone. I very much trust God and myself at a level that I never have before. And I'm okay with that. But I also recognize that I'm the type of flavor in my whole life that I can smash my head into a wall 3 times, but unless it knocks me out unconscious, I won't learn the lesson. I broke through that all day. But the biggest mistake I had in my whole life and my whole career was ever thinking that there was a finish line. Because the moment I do, I stop making the deposits that created the result in the first place. And the moment I believe the result in front of me, I stop trying to make different deposits or change the recipe to actually give myself a chance of eating something different.
I love your analogies.
They're the only thing that makes sense in my brain.
Love your brain, the mind of George.
Still belongs in a straitjacket. I just share the safest parts with you.
Oh, appreciate it. I
don't know. You know, it's so funny. I'm really curious what you think of what I just answered because I'm like, I don't even think Bree had any clue what I was going to say to that.
I didn't. And honestly, I had a whole list of questions and nowhere to lead it from because of the way that we had this conversation. But I think I am coming to the understanding, and by listening to you, realizing that what comes up is meant to be. And I think you said this in one of your events, like you go and you curate, you're like, I have this on paper and it is nothing.
Ask Ashley. Like I'll tell everybody, the running joke is the only reason we make the schedule is to throw it out. But here's the funny part. If we don't make the schedule, the event doesn't work because the schedule creates the container. But then once we're there, we make adjustments to get to the goal. And that's everything. But here's the funniest part. Every entrepreneur, every person listening to this is like, I know outcomes and I know that and blah, blah, blah. No, you don't. You convince yourself logically that you do, but you don't hold yourself accountable to operating that same way. And it's really not hard. Like if I was in your business and I was like, I can't make money, I would grab every sound tool I had and I would try 4 different things a day and get 3 people a day at each of them. And I would be like, no, I'm coming to your office. Let's try this. How'd this feel? Do you have any friends? I would do that all day. I'd have a fucking $1 million business in 6 months. It's the only option. It's the only option. It just, you got to give yourself a chance. But people sit here and they tell me they're fucking hungry and they put an empty pan in the oven and wonder why it comes out with no fucking food in it. Well, sometimes you might need to change your ingredients. Sometimes you might need to go back to the grocery store. Sometimes you might need to find out there's some shit that existed that you didn't know existed, but you still have to try to put it in the goddamn oven. And nobody can do that but you. But I'm just really sick and I believed my own bullshit for so long that somehow magically you were going to dump a pound of coconut sugar on me that I needed to sweeten up my business. No, I just had to get sick of having brownies that tasted like a tree bark until I brought my happy ass to the store and found some coconut sugar. And then my brownies tasted good, right? Like if you don't like what it tastes like in front of you, don't change the meal, the plate of the dish that you have. Go change the raw ingredients for every next time you cook it. Change the recipe card. Instead of adding salt and pepper every time you make it, why not just go add salt and pepper when you cook it and see if that creates a better result? That's it.
That's it.
Or I'll just go on a tirade. There's a fire in me right now that hasn't been there.
I feel it.
And it's not like, here's the thing. I'm just no longer interested in being more committed to somebody else's results than them. So it's time that you fucking hear the truth. That's it. That's it. There's just a knowing. It's just a knowing. But everybody wants to know what separates everybody. Well, we live in 2024. And right now, you either see the world as under constraint or full of opportunity. And just your answer to that question alone will tell me everything I need to know on whether you're going to win or not. But the true question is, are you willing to turn yourself into whoever you get to be to capitalize on that opportunity, rather than staying convinced that who you are is enough and there's finish lines, that somehow we earned it or deserve it. And that means it comes forever.
I love this, and I have a million more questions, but I want to your time.
I don't care. Ask. Hold on. No, go. Ask. If you feel called to ask. I have 12 more minutes.
Okay. Well, then I will, more along the point of containers and constraints.
Yeah.
Because I saw your story that you just posted today about compartmentalization.
Oh yeah, that one was yesterday's. That one's expired because I have a new story for today. I'm working on it.
Okay. Well, I saw it today, so.
Yeah. Yep.
But compartmentalization versus Containers.
Oh, two different words and two different subjects.
Okay.
Yeah, so let me so I did an Instagram story where I talked about how human beings think we compartmentalize, but we don't. So we're convinced that how we show up at work is different than how we show up at home.
Mm.
That's the ego. The true core is that your authentic self shows up the same no matter what. We just like to make backdoors for ourselves. And so we're like, no, I do this at the gym but I don't do it in my business, but it's okay. That's not actually how the game works, right? And a true person understands that. Containers is a term that I use to basically prioritize and create structure in your life to support you in accomplishing what you want to accomplish, right? Like it's understanding that structure is everything, meaning like not rigidity, but having some semblance of an idea of where I'm putting my energy or where I'm spending my time or what bucket I'm going into. Like, for example, if you're going to the gym, I'm assuming everybody listening before they walk in, they have some semblance of an idea of what they're going to do or how amount of time. They're not like, I'm going to go in there for 9 hours, right? Like, that's a container. You're like, oh, I'm going for an hour, or I'm going to do my legs until I'm done. But even in you're done, you're like, I'm not going to be here for more than 2 hours. You know what I'm talking about, right? That's a container, right? Container creates a measure for you that also creates a massive amount of honesty if you're willing to look at it, right? And so containers are a term that I use to protect ourselves, our outcomes, our goals, what we're trying to achieve. Like, especially if you're an entrepreneur, like if you create a container in your calendar that says, I do my best work from 8 to 10 a.m., but then you let everybody else distract that container, then you really didn't create a container. You're just lying to yourself, right? Like, no, you're not going to win, right? So with containers, the mistake that's made is the rigidity about the container instead of the outcome we're trying to achieve. And so that's where there's this constant dance. But I like to relate it to relationships, right? So even if you're not in one and you've ever been in one or been in a successful one or one that's grown, when you start dating somebody, you have agreements, both spoken and unspoken, expectations back and forth. But as the relationships evolves, or something changes, if you renegotiate those containers and bring them into integrity, you always operate. But if something breaks, you either renegotiate that container to a new term or it breaks down. That's just containers, right? It's making a plan or building some alignment or structure for ourselves to give us the ability to win, right? And so I use that to basically teach it, because what a container is not is like, I'm going to do this thing every single day no matter what results it's creating me. I'm not going to adjust, I'm not going to move, I'm not going to change. Like, no, that's rigidity, that's fear-based, right? So what I look at is like, everything we do, we have to think in outcomes, because nothing is really quite linear, right? But it's like, okay, if I want to lose 100 pounds in a year, right, I have to have some semblance of a plan. Big mistake number one, I'm going to go work out an hour a day. But yeah, no, you're not. None of us are, myself included, right? But I'm like, what are some inputs that can get me close to that outcome, right? Like, and I'm like, okay, I'll go on steps every single day. And if I don't intentionally create a plan and space for that in my existing life, it's not going to happen, because I haven't done that thing before, or I wouldn't be looking to lose 100 pounds, right? So what I've been doing hasn't worked. So I'm like, okay, cool. Well, I'm going to create some space in my day. I'm going to spend 20 minutes every day for the next 30 days walking, and I'm going to kind of earn this and do it. That's a container, right? I'm protecting my progress. I'm protecting my inputs. I'm knowing that it's a thing I do every day. It's not about intensity. It's about consistency, right? And so if I have clarity, I want to lose 100 pounds, I don't give a how many ways you can do it. The moment your brain goes to, oh, if I just went for a 10-minute walk today and cut out soda, I'd probably get closer. If you go any further past that point, you've already lost, because you just found the first two steps that would already, in this moment where you are closer to that goal than you've ever been before, if you did today, would actually already tomorrow have an impact on your body that gets you closer. And so when you find clarity, you create the container to start hitting the inputs, but then you make adjustments and you're like, God, I feel good walking. I want to walk more. Great, walk more. But you got to make adjustments and go. And so that's why I use the word container. If not, we sit here and we're like, oh, forever in the ether, boom. No, you either want it or you don't. Well, if you want it, how do you install it? You just start installing it. And then you realize that, like, holy moly, we're really simple biological creatures. We like to think we're really complicated, but we're not. We're mammals. And so we just simply build these containers. And for me, it's to hold ourselves accountable, to remind us of what we want. So when the world gets heavy or we get distracted, We have a place to go to protect our vision and give ourselves what we said was important, but it's not about its rigidity or how perfect it looks. So we chose to try. Because what other people don't realize is like, you can tell me all day that you're so pissed that you only went to the gym for 10 minutes instead of an hour, and you can't tell why I'm smiling. And I was like, because that 10 minutes tells me more about where you're going to be in the future than it does with how frustrated you are in the conversation. So as long as you protect this, that's where it goes. But like everyone's like, George, how'd you lose the 80 pounds and keep it off? And like, why do you have calves so big? This is what I did a story on today, Brie. Why I have big calves. Because it's the number one question I get asked. And what's really funny is everybody's going to expect me to tell them this crazy workout I do, right? Do you want to know what's funny? Is I do calves for 5 minutes a day, and that's it. And I just do them every day. That's it. And they're all stretches. I walk on the treadmill backwards. I go put my hands against the wall and I do calf raises with just my foot. And then I hold the stretches at the bottom. And I just do it for 5 to 10 minutes a day every day. And I've been doing it for like 15 years. And everyone's like, yeah, but I don't have calves like yours. I don't have calves like yours. I'm like, well, you're not in the kitchen, bro. You're doing it once a week. I do 5 minutes a day. It's no different, right? You can sit here and tell me, oh, I want to write a book. I want to write a book. I'm sitting here staring at a blank page. I've been trying to write 100 pages, trying to write 100 pages. Great. Just commit to a paragraph a day. Everybody can write a paragraph a day. And if you just got honest with yourself in the last 14 days, you'd have 17 pages, but you still have zero. Because it's not that you can't write the page, it's that you don't really want to write the book, but you keep lying to yourself and saying that you do, collecting evidence and beating yourself up and just continuing to move the starting line.
I feel like that's just a mic drop. I love all of what you said. But there is one, you said protecting your vision, and you've mentioned it multiple times without saying your how and like the models of it.
Mm-hmm.
You have this amazing container that allows you to protect your vision, like when shit hits the fan or you feel not stuck, or
Yeah.
after you come to the awareness of stuck.
Yes. There you go. There you go. Yeah.
You come to the awareness of stuck, and I have used these pieces in
Uh-huh.
multiple ways.
Uh-huh.
Um, can you like
Yeah, I will.
super high level Cliff
Yeah.
Notes version, and
Yeah.
then I'll get into the rapid fires.
Yeah. And then here's the thing about stuck. When everybody's like, I'm stuck or I don't have clarity, they can't tell why I'm so excited. Because that means you have a blank canvas that you were convinced you didn't have, and you just have a fear of putting something on it. That's the truth. That's the truth. So everybody go read Big Magic by the woman who wrote Eat, Pray, Love. It's incredible. I did it this morning. It's heavenly. Okay. When it comes down to this, Simon Bowen says this better than anybody, and Bree will now vouch for this. Nobody chooses to self-sabotage. We just simply behave our way away from it because we forget that our environments basically pull us back into the ship and don't protect our vision. And so I was like, how can I guarantee I win every day? And so I create models that I used on myself to beat everything, and then I don't share them with the world until they work. And so the core models that actually work are my sacred lightkeeper quadrants, still named TBD, but it's intentionally focused on building yourself for who you want to be in the future and doing it before you touch anything else for that day because it guarantees your success. So we focus on your mind, your body, your state of being, and then we apply that person into your business or your goals. That could be to lose weight. That could be to launch a podcast. That could be to do sound healing because you have to earn the right to be on the field every day because no football player goes on the field without their pads on, but yet you think you're going to win if you do. So that model exists, but then that model becomes tangible and measurable, which what scares most people because I can actually show you on paper how you can achieve what you want to achieve and you can't hide from it anymore because we add the wedge, which is the floor and the ceiling, which we can actually tangibly show you when your inputs, what results they'll create. And then you're like, yeah, but what happens if I'm having a bad day? I'm like, oh, we got you. We have a model for that called the SOS, which is your own medicine cabinet to self triage, to hit your triage nurses as needed, or to dig into the medicine cabinet and grab exactly what you need in that moment to get back to the clarity that you have in those quadrants. And this is the name of the game. Nobody can give you your clarity and nobody can tell you your vision. But the truth is that you already knew that and you're afraid of standing in it because there's shame associated because we don't know how to put the plan into place. Well, I solve that and the community and the support and all the permission slips you need with no place to hide for $100 a month.
Yes,
You're welcome. And
yes.
why is it $100 a month? Because if you don't think about it, you won't do it. And you think about a cup of coffee every day. But I'm not joking. And Bree will tell you because she knows my private clients that pay me 5 figures a month for coaching. And they have the same models installed in them every day. And they're the exact same things that we use for them. just at different levels and different ingredients filled into the buckets.
Yes. And it's I will say just this month having the alliance, I'm going to plug you and testimony and all of the things at the same time. Just this month has been paramount in shifting the way that I show up because I have been hiding in the all in
Uh-huh.
for like since I did email marketing. So like 3 years ago. And I have changed my health. I've changed the way that I think about things. And as I am coming into all of these amazing relationships, there's so much coming up for me that I literally spent like a whole 40 minutes crying, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much coming up and I don't know if I have space to hold it for me. And I just like, you know what, we'll just let it go and see where it goes. And it's still coming out today. It just feels so different.
Yeah, and how's it feel to start tuning your radio dial into being able to actually feel the joy that was around you and then see more of it?
I'd say that it feels new, but I can also see moments where I've felt it before. So
Uh-huh. Yeah,
it
because it's not that we don't know, it's that we forget
yes.
because we get the constraint to get in the way. And yes, Bree, I've noticed, and for everybody listening, there are no compartments. Can you really create abundance in your business if you're sacrificing your health?
No.
Can you really win when all your self-talk when you're away is absolutely horrible and the only difference right now is that you actually have more positive self-talk happening than before, and then magically you're seeing opportunity in front of you and all these magical women that you're creating and more relationships and spaces and opportunity that you're stepping into. We also have to remember that we have to start getting used to how good it feels and remembering this because it's always a ride. So no matter what side it's on, we always protect the inputs. We remember these ones and then we also never forget where we came from because the inputs are what matters.
And I will ask one of my rapid fire questions because we have like three
Go ahead.
minutes.
Uh-huh.
So normally the way that I would ask this is if today was on your last day on earth, what would you want written on your epitaph? And I realized that that wasn't the right way I wanted to ask the question. So for you, the way that I want to ask it is what is the legacy that you are excited to leave?
You could have asked it either way. The answer would have been the same. It's that if anybody is even thinking about me because of my passing or me no longer being here, that the only thought was that it triggered them to realize that they were gifted, mattered, and their power in this world was needed. And I gave them a permission slip to see that and enough rocket fuel to make it happen no matter what the world says is going to. Because that's the world that I'm proud to leave for my kids. Because nothing else really matters.
Thank you.
Thank you. And by the way, I'll just say it also will help you make money in your business and live in alignment because you get to do both. I just focus on the real thing that matters, which is you.
Yes, yes, yes. And the way that I can best say this as we end the show is when you feel stuck, move. When you can't think, breathe. And when everything around you feels like it's crumbling, just feel all of it. Remember that everything you need is right under your nose. I love you so much and thank you so much for being on this podcast, and I will catch you in the next episode.